The Bulldogs went weirdly almost according to script. They got the big lead again like they did against the Cats. They looked in control of the game, and then their back half was terrible in the end, Lord, and they conceded. And they're at the crossroads now, the Bulldogs, of where they go next.
And we wanted to look at their year. You know, they've been way off the pace. Even Luke Beveridge admitted it maybe 6 weeks ago. He said, we're just a long way off. And you looked at it against top 8 sides, 3 wins and 8 losses. And their last win, you know, since the midway point of the season was only against Melbourne, have fallen short. I think this is a worse loss than last year. Melbourne, you know, were a great side and they had them, but they just fell apart in the last quarter. But this one, against a young Fremantle side who had 4 blokes who'd played finals, they looked like they were deers in the headlights. And I just wanted to highlight that play there, Sam. Probably the wrong one to go to Sam, but the defence was not worked out all year, Hutch. So they were sagging off consistently, didn't man the mark. They're probably a tactic because of the stand rule. They didn't want to man the mark and those types of things. But I don't think Liam Jones is going to fix it. I don't think Rory Lobb's going to fix it. I think it's a system issue for the Western Bulldogs.
So what would they do, Cara? Do they bring in fresh coaches? Do they revamp?
They absolutely need to bring in fresh coaches. And I actually, Sam Edmund on your radio station today sort of hinted at winds of change. Now, obviously, there's player personnel leaving, but Luke Beveridge, I think, needs to change up his team. And this is no slight on any of his assistants, but he needs some new assistants and he needs some stronger people around him. There's been a view for me, Matthew, that he has too big a say. He tries to run too much at that footy club. He worries too much about what's getting out in the media. We know he's had a terrible relationship with the media this year for a lot of the year, and I think he needs to stop worrying about all of that stuff. I hope his CEO is standing up to him and his footy boss, but I think they sort of creep around him sometimes.
We've been consistent on this. I think losing Ashley Hansen and Stephen King were 2 big losses for them in last year's off-season. And
they're, again, in a situation where Josh Dunkley is attracting some interest. Port Adelaide is the reported club. But this is what Luke Beveridge had to say.
There's some unknowns. I mean, the freer market, as far as the player market, it gets heightened every year. So, you know, we're desperate. We're hoping that Josh is going to stay, but I can't tell you whether he is or whether he isn't.
It's amazing that it's gone on for, 2 years now, Josh Dunkley. And where it's a big loss if he does leave is the type of player he is. To me, Sam, you played them in the last game of the year. He seems different to the rest of them in the way he plays, you know, to Treloar and McRae and these types. So he's one you wouldn't want to lose.
Well, he came down to Hawthorn training as a 16-year-old and we called him Super Kid because he ruined all the drills by winning all the contests and kept an eye on him ever since, and he's a phenomenal player. And the two-way aspect of the way he plays the game would be lost for any club, but they've got a lot of midfield depth. So. And
of high character too, Josh Dunkley.
Longview was a tremendous coaching performance. First finals, really, first win. He wasn't daunted at half-time either with the spot of the game.
Yeah, a lot more confident now than what was with 15 minutes to go in that second quarter. Thought our game got back in order. We stayed in the contest a little bit more, got the game played in our front half, and their back line gave us a few looks offensively.
And he basically said after the game the tide had turned and we weren't all that worried. Would you have given a half-time interview like that?
I worked with him when I was at West Coast as a player, and it doesn't surprise me to see him so composed, but his level of understanding of the game is very, very high, and he just looked so confident in their system, and hardly a surprise the way they've played all year.
And the final spotlight for a couple of teams, Lordo?
Yeah, well, obviously Gary Rowan was last week's one. Let's see what we can do here. Mason Cox, I'm going to put in the firing line here. So I'm just wondering if McRae has lost trust in him as a forward. So he played 46% of game time, no forward play. So I just wonder if he thinks he's a liability at ground level in the forward line and we need pressure. So up against Sean Darcy, he needs to compete hard because look at him, he's playing a lot of game time on the bench. So Mason Cox v Sean Darcy is a big one when he's in the ruck. And for the Fremantle Dockers, this is another one that's a bit contentious, but I think David Mundy is the player I want to highlight. So this is the best of David Mundy at 35, 36 years of age. But I think under the heat of what Collingwood bring, the speed or the lack of David Mundy will be an interesting time against some of those Collingwood players.
They haven't really had the luxury that Geelong have had with Joel, have they, of managing him the way that they would have probably liked.
Well, Sarong and Brayshaw are the class players. Sam, I'll see what you think of this one.
Oh, I couldn't disagree more. I think he's just vital to the way they play. They've got speed all over the field, and having one wise mind to set everyone else up and support everyone else. He also plays quite low game time, which you would expect, but I think he's going to be vital for them this week.
You're settling into that chair very well if you're saying I couldn't disagree more. It's pretty common from that chair on a normal night.